Welcome all lunch survivors to the smart charging session. Apparently it's more here than in the electric plane session, so we're happy. I'm going to do a short introduction of the speakers, and we have this app that you all have. You can ask questions in the app and under EV8. And they will come up on my tablet, and we can use them afterwards in the discussion. As you see, I'm a long-time journalist at Teknisk Ukeblad, and I almost cut my finger off last week because I'm installing a charger at home. Slip of the knife. So I'm prepared for the car I'm going to buy in a year or two. Okay, the first speaker is Edgeir Vårdal Aksnes. He's CEO or founder at Tibber, which is a pretty interesting Norwegian electricity company, and they also do charging, of course. Edgeir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I'm not going to talk about Tibber as an energy company. I'm going to talk about what we do in the area around smart charging. And I'm going to talk about super smart charging, because everybody's talking about smart charging. So let's get to that. Just to see if this works. It works, that's good. So today in our app, it is possible to connect the car or a charging station. And this is the background, and this is the data that we are now going to talk about. So we have a long range of different electric car models, which is possible for a user to connect in our app. And our app is actually a full electricity company, just inside an app. And the way this works is that it's a lot of different algorithms on the behind the scenes here that are working in order to charge the car at the best possible times during the day. So I'm going to run a few examples, and now I'm actually breaking the European GDPR regulation, because I'm going to show personal sensitive information. However, it's my own, so I think it's going to be okay. And this is now the exact consumption in my home yesterday. So I have taken out data, and this was the exact consumption in my home yesterday. And you can definitely see here when we got up in the morning around 6 o'clock, and then we went to work, and then we got home again around, or at least my kids came home again around 4 or 5 in the evening, and then we put a lot of stuff and were cooking around 6 o'clock. So this is the typical behavior, and it's a very typical day for a typical home in Norway, and I think you can copy this to most Northern European homes. So what happens if we then put on charging? Well, this is what happens. If I get home at 1600, I put in my charger, then everything will then increase. And if we then start adding this up in a neighborhood, we're adding 10 homes, 100 homes, 1,000 homes, we are obviously getting a small problem here, because the grid is not built for a big peak load at this hour. Also, this is very stupid, because in Norway and in most Northern European countries, it is possible now to get hourly priced electricity. So hourly priced electricity. However, the most expensive hours are during the early morning and from 4 o'clock and so forth. So the whole point is to get this to shift. Shift from the expensive hours and the peak loads and flatten out the whole curve. And this is what is happening behind the scenes here, so that the app, or actually the algorithms, are talking to either to the charging station or directly to the car, if you have a Tesla or BMW or so on. Then we are shifting the load and shifting the charge point in time for when you charge to those green hours where there is basically no consumption in the electricity grid, and this way we are balancing out the whole grid. Now, this is actually solving not only one problem, but two problems, because what I was illustrating right now is a volume of load, so taking a whole volume and shifting that to some other hours. That is relatively smart charging. However, there is also super smart charging, and that is when we are able to help out on the frequency in the grid. Because in order for all of these lights to actually light up, the frequency in the grid needs to be at exact 50 hertz. And by that, you need to microbalance the whole grid all the time, each and every second during the day. And this is where also smart charging will come into play, because when a charger or a car is connected, you can shift, or you can tweak and reduce the consumption slightly amongst thousands of cars in order to just to balance the whole frequency in the grid. This is something that only big industrial players are able to tap into as a market today. However, when all consumers are then connecting their loads through an app, we can aggregate thousands and tens of thousands of cars and then help out balancing the whole grid. So that is what is basically happening. If you have a Tesla, you will typically want to charge 22 kilowatt. But what we do there is that we are reducing the peak or the load of that, reducing that to typically 18 kilowatt, and then we are regulating this on a micro level so that the frequency in the grid is balanced out alongside as the user is also getting a lower price for the electricity. So the whole point here with smart charging is not only to do one thing, is to help out on the peak shaving. Shifting the peak is to balance the whole frequency, and it's also about shifting balances from one area to another area if there are local problems as well. So by doing this, it's a huge benefit for the society and for the grid, and also for the user, because the user is getting a lower average electricity price due to this hourly pricing, and he's actually getting a kickback from the grid companies in order to participate in the balancing act. So, if you are doing this correctly, it's actually possible to get all charging at home for free. That, I think, is actually achievable during the next couple of years. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Vi tar det upp etterpå. The picture of the charger there was actually the one I almost sacrificed my finger for. Next speaker is from the UK. It's Parveen Begum from Solisco. I've seen on your website that you are the Global Clean Energy's award for most innovative EV power tech provider in the UK. So the floor is yours, Parveen.
Thank you. So Solisco, we were born in 2016 as a startup company with the real intention to put as much renewable energy into electric vehicle charging. My background is Tesla, so I was able to really experience the challenges that EV drivers faced with the poor infrastructure developments in the UK at the time. We wanted to create a concept that was more like a traditional fuel station, so something that gave the user better experience. It was going to revolutionize the way we looked for EV chargers. So instead of looking for the EV charging posts, you're actually looking for a station. And with that in mind, we developed partnerships with key companies that were on the same wavelength as us. And these companies had the right technologies in place that could enable this infrastructure to come to life. So with that in mind, we launched our electric infrastructure development firm. We offer 3 levels of services, so everything from consulting and educating people about infrastructure to the design and planning and the supply and execution. So what is the importance of smart charging and what are the opportunities that it will bring? I'm going to talk to you about a project that we're working on called the Smart Energy Transportation and Charging Hub. This is with 2 customers in mind, the West Midlands Combined Authority, which is made up of 18 local authorities and 4 partnership enterprises. They have a big commitment to reducing their air quality targets, and also they've got a big focus on mobility services as part of their transportation plan. Kiel University, so they are Europe's leading research partner. So there's a project called the SEND project. It's a smart energy network demonstrator. It's the first at-scale, large project that the European Union is funding. So again, another great partner to have on this project to demonstrate what we can do in achieving the project outcomes. Innovate UK and the Office for Low Emission Vehicles is actually a supporting partner here, enabling us to get the right funding in place to deploy such a big project with the ambitions we have in mind in such a small time frame. The aim for this project would be developed by September of this year and then launched within at least 18 months. So what is our project? Well, it is taking a barren car park like this and transforming it into an innovative energy hub. What do we aim to see here? Well, we aim to put enough PV, battery storage, and smart software systems. We are looking to create multiple function spaces, so EV car sharing clubs, bike sharing platforms, and advertising screens, and really transforming it into something like this. So, as I said, transforming a car park by putting in the solar, we're looking at introducing new revenue opportunities, better user experiences, as Ed said, supporting the grid services, but also the local community. We're looking at driving an EV uptake by really showing the clear signal that infrastructure is here, and that the government is serious in supporting it. This is a public train station car park, so somewhere where people are able to leave their cars during the day to charge with renewable energy, and then in the evenings when the car park is empty, allowing the public living nearby to actually come back and charge their vehicles because they don't have access to a driveway. What we're trying to achieve here further is tackling the wider social and environmental impacts. So with the solar generation, we can see that in a car park of over 600 parking spaces, we're able to develop 1.3 megawatts of solar energy. Now, even after putting the energy into the train station building itself and the car park lighting, we are still able to achieve over 23,000 kilowatt hours of surplus. And if we put that straight into EVs, we're looking at over 89,000 electric solar miles generated in that year. And of course, when we don't have the energy going into electric vehicles or the buildings, and we still have surplus, we are looking at being able to offer the local social housing the opportunity to buy this energy, so peer-to-peer energy trading, and putting it into the homes of people who can't actually afford the high energy costs that we face in the UK at the moment. So looking at the EV charging revenues, interestingly, the car parks that we're looking at the moment don't charge for parking vehicles. It's a free, public, accessible car park. But what happens when we have to put charging points in? Are we going to charge our customers? Well, we like to think that by reducing those tariffs, we can actually incentivize behavior, get people to charge their vehicles here, and then in the future, if they are having to pay a premium, then we can put that back into the way of energy tokens. So having a Nectar card, having a Shell fuel card, putting it into their pocket so then they can reinvest in lower costs for charging as well as energy costs at home. I know I'm reaching my time limit, so I'm going to go very fast through the next few slides. But essentially, it's about creating a better user experience and also integrating other revenue streams. I won't touch into vehicle-to-grid with too much detail because I know my next speaker will, from Nissan will have more details on this. But just to show you some of the things we're doing in the way of future technologies, we're integrating blockchain reward mechanisms as well as obtaining a license for WMCA to become a peer-to-peer energy aggregator. What we're trying to determine is that hubs like this can be implemented in all kinds of car parks. The opportunities are massive. In the UK alone, we're looking at over 20,000 publicly accessible car parks. So with that in mind, we hope that this can directly tackle the current air pollution crisis. It is everybody's responsibility, so let's get the infrastructure right and start implementing this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Next speaker is Tormod Bergheim from the Norwegian EV Association, who's making this conference together with us. And you are an advisor for charging. You're basically one of the guys who is in charge of charging in the EV Association. So the floor is yours, Tormod.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've been an executive manager for many years, maybe too many, among them in Ensto and SAS. I always used to tell my friends when I quit this executive management thing, I'm going to work with cars. Little did I know then that it would be electric cars, really. And this is really awesome. Today I'm manager of the charging of ICE3. I have reviewed more than 1,300 offers on larger scale facilities for charging from most of the major suppliers. This is for very many cooperatives, house owning, businesses, municipalities, and airports. You've seen many big numbers about Norway. I think maybe one of the nice ones is also that we're in the top 3 in numbers of EVs, even though both China and United States are very big. Norway's goal is in 2025 only sell cars who are fossil-free. One of the things the community started was to provide grants for installing EV charging infrastructure. This has been a really big success, very popular, and the amount of grant is about 2 till 3 or 500 euros. What's happening in Norway is we build bigger infrastructure. In the early years, housing cooperatives in Norway started building a few shared points. But people get tired of queuing, waiting until the hour is 8, then I have my 4 hours, and so on. So then we started building infrastructure to each car park in all the housing cooperatives. The biggest facility we have today is the infrastructure of 800 in one housing cooperatives. Another one we installed and was finished just a couple of weeks ago in Oslo had 205 car parks, but 58% of them bought the box already. 58% of the housing cooperative. That's very high when we have 7-8% car fleet of electric still in the company. You can see Avinor has built now, this is from Gardermoen. They started with 1,000 car parks nationally. Soon there will be 3,000. And you can see they are very often full. The grant for infrastructure was a very good trigger. But maybe most important is the increase of value of the property. That's the main driver out today. With new net tariffs in a couple of years, EV owner will focus on charging faster when prices are low. They will also charge faster to get a higher efficiency. Efficiency is tested, and some EVs are only by 59% when they charge as a low power. Preheating of battery is actually a very important part of driving EV, especially in cold winter. Many don't recognize that this can take up till 7 kilowatts. Smarter connectivity. It is very difficult to choose a charging system today. The corporations scrapping about 2 and even 1-year-old charging systems because they didn't take into account the need of smartness and the limitation of the current available. The future is the communication in the whole chain. I believe the future smartness and connectivity will fix many of the charging problems we have today. Thank you very much. This is probably one of the nicest scenery for charging a car. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you, Tormod. Last speaker is Francisco Jose Carranza Sierra. You have a long name. And you have from Nissan, and you also have a very long title, but it's up there, so I'm not going to read it. The floor is yours, Francisco.
Yeah, we do have very long names in Spain, but we can cut it. No need. Next time, you just can say Francisco Carranza. Everybody will be fine. So, thank you for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here with all you guys today. Has been more than 10 years that we started this journey of electrification, and I'm really glad to see that things are radically changing, and we are not alone preaching in the dark like we have been in the past. We see now new startups, very smart people talking about how smart the system needs to be to make sure that electric vehicles can become a reality in our neighborhoods. Electric mobility has gone much beyond the car, right? So we started, with it was mentioned before this morning, right? Transition on, okay, can we just do the same car as we were doing before, just put a battery and electric motor and then go with it, right? So this is exactly the wrong approach. So we all understood that electric mobility needs to be integrated in electricity grid. We need to be coordinated with the further penetration of renewable energy. And we all need to live in a system that is smart, that is renewable, and is making sure that energy and mobility are going hand in hand to fight these climate change challenges we have. So all of this is a reality now. So as I said, more than 10 years ago, we started to think about how we can engage into this transition of electric mobility. And we have been developing several pieces of the puzzle, understanding that, for example, vehicles need to be bidirectional, that batteries in cars will have a second life in homes and buildings and portable devices and so on, that our customers need to have solar energy along with cars and batteries. So we all need to live in an ecosystem that is ensuring more and more that our footprint as humans in the planet is becoming as low as possible for everything we do. So all of this to say that we are moving away from just car companies, right? So in our belief, companies that will remain doing business as before are not going to be successful basically in the short term, right? So we have seen that there is a transition we have to engage, but a real one, right? So it's not just something that is there for show. Is that we have to engage a very deep transformation about how car companies are going to be making business in the future. We're no longer going to be selling cars at dealers. We need to diversify our portfolio and offer to our customers the full package of solutions to make their life truly sustainable. So that's why we say that we are moving from transforming the way people move and the people drive to changing people's life in general. So we all know the history of the Nissan Leaf. Again, launched about 10 years ago, #1 electric vehicle in Europe, #1 car overall in Norway, and best sold EV in more than 18 countries in Europe. So it has been a significant success for our company, showing that we are heading in the right direction. Right? So this is what our customers want, this is what the society is expecting from large technology companies like us, is developing solutions that are truly changing our footprint in the planet. So our overall vision, as I mentioned before, has gone much beyond the car itself. Right? So we need to see the full ecosystem around this transition towards a more sustainable way of living. Right? So the vehicles need to be integrated smartly in the home, but not only in your home, but also in the neighborhood, in the overall grid. So you were mentioning before frequency regulation, distribution grid congestion. All of these are problems that are going to become really real very soon, right? And nobody here wants to have power cuts and problems like this in their daily life. Right? So we have to be smart in the way vehicles are integrated. That's why since 2013, all the Nissan cars have become grid, let's say, integratable with the bidirectional connection. At the same time, we are developing solutions for solar, we are developing solutions for storage at home with Second Life, and we are developing solutions that are creating these layers of smartness, I would say, around the system, because we need to go to a more sustainable society, being smart and being efficient in what we do. So all in all, we have to do this all together. So we have our tiny role as a technology company, but we need all of you, we need the startups, we need governments, we need partners in the energy sector, in the digital sector, in the installation sector, because all of us, we have a piece of the cake to eat and a tiny place into this new ecosystem. Thank you.
Just take a seat there, Francesco, and you other guys can come up and take your chairs. So we got a lot of questions on the iPad here, but I'll like to start off with one that is a little tricky for me as a journalist, because I've been bombarded the last 10 years with everything that is smart. Everything is smart these days. You start off with a smartphone, and we have smart cities. Try to define what a smart city is. So is there a common ground here, guys, that we can agree on, which defines smart charging? Maybe you, Tormod, could start off. Do you have a grasp of what is smart charging?
Well, I think it's very much about connectivity. So everything that's communicated together, from the car till the charging system, till the building, and then to the smart grid again.
Which, of course, excludes a lot of the chargers we have today.
Yes, sorry to say so, yes.
Yeah. Are we agreeing on this? Is there a definition of what a smart charger is? Is this the correct way, or?
I think it has become, I wouldn't say meaningless, but it's become like a word to define everything around us.
Yeah.
Right? So more than smart, we need to understand what is the purpose and what is the actual benefit that each of the different pieces are going to deliver. Because you can have a very smart system that is doing nothing, right? So you just have an app and just play with it, and there is no value for the society or for you or for the electricity players. It's very smart. Look at this. So I have an app here. I can have a graph, right? But is this a type of smart we need, right? So somehow you create trends, and smart becomes nothing, basically.
I think, sorry. Sorry, I think from my point of view, smart also needs to translate to simple for the user. So for a lot of users, they have to download many apps, have many cards, and what we're exploring for certainly the SETCH project is using the platform that they are already familiar with. So they use something called a Swift card, which is also being developed in app format, which will allow them to use the buses, the trains, the bicycles, and the car sharing club, and the chargers. And we need to be working with the charging partners to enable that connectivity to become so much simpler. And if you can do that, then you can automatically drive up uptake. If somebody doesn't have an EV, but that comes up on their app, they're more likely to try it. So I think we need to make sure smart doesn't overcomplicate what the user's looking for as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we agree that the common ground here is connectivity, that you need a connected either car or charger. And then whatever then you do on top of that, that's where the smartness comes in. It can be connected to devices, rooftop solar, etc. But the point is, the prerequisite for everything is that it needs to be connected. And whenever it is connected, you can put any smartness, any algorithm on top of it.
Mm-hmm. What I think is really lacking here, it's been promising for many years, and you're probably one of the very few that delivers on this, is bidirectional charging. I mean, I want to utilize bidirectional charging in my house to lower the bill. You are on your way, but the great thing is to use the car much more. But we are far from bidirectional charging for most of the cars. Nissan is the only one delivering on this, and apparently Mitsubishi as well. Shouldn't this be a demand for the car industry to implement?
My personal opinion is at some point of time there is going to be a regulated framework on that. Like you have a specific regulation for CO2 or for emissions and so on. There's going to be a regulation about electric vehicle grid integration, somehow establishing some rules of the game. Because I think what we learned when we started with the Leaf a while ago, when we sit down with an energy company saying, let's start preparing a scenario in which 100% of the vehicles are electric, then the reaction is, no, wait. This cannot happen. Why can this happen? Then you start looking at all the bottlenecks you have there and say, okay, how can you solve this? Either just have to invest billions and billions and billions of pounds and euro, or you have to have vehicles that are truly contributing to have a stable system. So that's probably one of the key differences. We started very early on, and our cap was 100% of the cars need to be electric. What needs to happen for that to be real? How the vehicles need to be designed? What are the features that the vehicles need to have for having a society in which 100% of the cars are electric?
And we need standards as well. And they are not around yet, are they?
Sorry, they're not?
The standards, they are not ready.
They're not ready. So they are coming. So there's been a number of publications on that, and probably in the next 6-7 years, we're going to start seeing the color of a few of standards. But we have to go faster than that, right? So in 5 years, probably the penetration rate, if you take here in Norway, of EVs is going to be almost 100%. So if you have not a standard by then, there's been a mistake somewhere down the line.
Do you think this is a valid question? That whether we should have two-way charging?
Yes, of course. But I think very many dreamed of these ones. But we can see it's still quite some years to go, because the first one arrived just now, this as a bidirectional, and few cars are provided for it.
Yeah.
So I think the connectivity is actually, and the smart layer is actually the first things happening, and still will solve many problems. But the luxury of using a car to your dinner is a little bit further on the road.
So basically, what we invest a lot of money in home chargers in Norway. So basically, most of them will be out of date in a few years. Is that?
That's a good business.
Yeah.
It's like having a phone. It is going to be out of date, and same thing with a charger.
But a charger and installation is much more expensive than a phone. Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the difficult part with many of the cooperatives, which buy these very expensive facilities, and they found out after 1 year that you really have to scrap it. So the knowledge is far too little for them.
Yeah.
So that's why we try to give them advisory to increase that.
So people should call you, actually.
Oh, they do.
The top questions from the audience here. How can EV drivers be incentivized to charge smarter? You are doing this.
We are doing this today, and thousands and tens of thousands are using this today. And there are two prerequisites. One, it must be simple. So it must be super simple just to start using a solution. So what we did was for the user to actually just use his credentials for his car, and then the solution and the algorithm is starting to talk to the car in order to start and stop charging. So that's one prerequisite, is to have it simple. It shouldn't be any hassle. Secondly, you need to profit from it somehow. And today we are seeing an average that doing time shifting and of the hour of charging is giving a financial benefit of roughly 20%. And you're not becoming a millionaire, but it's definitely helping on a daily basis. So you are getting the right incentives in order to do that, and it's all comes into your pocketbook.
What about the rest of Europe, UK, and?
So I think from our point of view, we're working with a company called Energy Mine, and they use AI and blockchain technology to really understand the behaviors of users and then try and channel it to match with the energy demands and issues we have around charging in the evening as opposed to the daytime. So our proposition is essentially, if we can install this infrastructure and then allow for a percentage of the revenues to feed into that pot, then we can then redistribute that in the way of energy tokens, which will encourage more usage. And those energy tokens shouldn't just be restricted to use on EV charging. It should enable the user to essentially decide, do I want to use this towards reducing my home energy bills? Do I want to use this towards a coffee? Or do I want to cash it out? So I think that's really important, giving the user a lot of choices within the incentives.
We have deployed already a number of bidirectional units out there. We have been doing many surveys. At the beginning, we were thinking we're going to have like a parallel market. We're going to be remunerating the customer depending on how many hours they're plugging in, depending on how much the wind is blowing or the sun is shining. It becomes like an engineering playground, right? So this is not what the customer wants. The customer wants something that is extremely easy, is not variable, is not depending on how much the wind is blowing. So it has to be something pretty stable. And it has to be something where he has to do nothing. Right? Because he has to say, okay, I have to program something or manually do something. It's not going to happen. Right? So it has to be something as simple as you go home, you plug your car, and you know your car is doing the right thing. And at the end of the month, you know you get something stable in return. So after all these studies, we came with the free electricity option. It's something that everybody understands, right? So you don't even need to count how many pounds or euro or kronas are there. So you know that anything that is getting out of that charger is for free. And this is creating somehow peace of mind in the customer. So the vehicle warranty is maintained, the electricity that is coming from there is for free. So it's creating a stable framework where the consumer feels safe.
Yeah. It seems that Tibber is interesting to some of the audience here. They have two questions for you, Geir. What can you do to reduce the high vampire drain when my Tesla is connected to the Tibber system, and they want to know when Tibber is available in Europe?
So the way I think this is very vendor specific when it comes to the car. So each and every car is talking to through internet on specific different ways. Tesla is having a direct connection all the time, which is basically leading to what they call a vampire drain. I think that's the only car brand which has that kind of a problem at the moment. To be quite honest, we have tested many different brands, and I think that's just a manner of Tesla is going to change their infrastructure. I'm just guessing. And what was the second question?
When will you be available to European countries?
Oh, that's gonna.
Or the world.
It's gonna start. It's gonna start now this year.
Okay.
So we are starting to roll out into new markets this year.
Where are you going to start?
In Europe.
In Europe. So you actually take Europe in one step. That's interesting. Francisco, you have been in the business for many years, and we heard about second life for batteries a long time. There aren't very many second life batteries so far. But will this be an integrated component in the future's smart charging system, to have a battery at home based on old leaf batteries?
It is. I think usually I present a chart on the evolution of the lithium battery market, where you can see the percentage of the lithium batteries that is going to go to car versus the percentage that is going to go to iPhones, right? So the car electric vehicle industry is going to represent more than 85% of the overall lithium market very soon, in just in a few years, because the batteries in the car are getting bigger, bigger, bigger. So, and what we are looking at now is how you can fit these 85% batteries that you get now. 10 years later, this 85 has to fit into the little 10% that is into the stationary storage somewhere as a second life product. So the objective is, I'm convinced that in a few years we're going to have second life batteries from cars everywhere. In your home, in buildings, in mobile things, everything that is compatible is going to be full of second life batteries, because it is a natural reaction from people, right? So you get a product that is still working, it still have 10 years of life, you're not going to throw it to the bin, right? So we are starting now because usually the end of life of a vehicle in Europe is between 10 to 15 years. So after 10 or 15 years, when you start getting some second life batteries back. So what we are doing now is preparing the design and development of all these new products that we are launching on a smaller scale, because as you say, we don't have a lot of supply of second life, but we have enough to start putting some units in the hands of customers and getting feedback and getting prepared for when the bulk of batteries are coming back.
Yeah, there's another question for you here. Oh, you would say
Just
something?
concerning the batteries, there has been a problem because of the scare of if it should go wrong with the batteries.
Yeah.
But there are a new concept now with the government funding starting in next year in Norway, where they're going to try to use this and make these models work out, actually.
Okay.
So it's coming,
Yeah.
but a safety issue.
Chargers today, they are conductive, and many are talking about inductive charging in the future, which is the efficiency of inductive charging is increasing all the time. And some people I talk to, they say it's almost the same, and it's far easier just to park the car and have it charged from the ground up. There's a question for you here. Have you thought of this?
Yes, of course. We have been working on inductive charging for many years. I think there are a few constraints in that technology. The first one is, for a product like the electric vehicle that is perceived by the market as being expensive, you're adding an extra amount of money for that. So you're going in the direction of adding, it's not 500 euro, right? So it's a big amount of money that you're going to add for the inductive charging. Then also, if you are thinking about vehicles that are integrated in the grid, where the battery is going to be providing services, every percentage of efficiency you lose is money lost in heat.
Yes.
Right? So if we are saying we're going to be making money in frequency markets and so on, if you're talking to him, he will say, no wireless, because my business case gets seriously damaged by that, right? So if you use wireless, you're not going to get any benefit from us, right? So there are drawbacks that are making more difficult to put this as a mainstream product today. It will become available for sure for premium cars because it's very comfortable and very cool to have it. But for the mass market, I see difficulties that are preventing this to become mainstream now.
So for us in Norway, it's an expensive way of melting snow. Yeah. Will we see any standardization of chargers? There are so many different versions, and some of them are very different. There's a question from the audience here. They want more standardization. Is that happening? Are you talking to each other?
My experience, what I see is the standards for AC charging are already there, right? So then, like always in Europe, right? So one country is going to add a little thing, the other country is going to add another little thing, and you're going to end up with a portfolio of chargers that they're not exactly the same depending on the country. But the standards are already there, and you have maybe many different brands. But the certifications are pretty homogeneous at the moment, IEC and CE marking and so on.
Okay, I think we're out of time, guys. So thank you very much. Very
you.
interesting.
Thank you.
who are following this online on the app, it's room 10 to use. If you also want to ask questions during this session, feel welcome and send in your very good, intelligent question. Oslo Electricity is co-organized by the city of Oslo, and we are going to talk about how to electrify the cities. My name is Erik Aasheim. I'm a journalist working mostly with sustainable question. And I have to admit, it was a little bit hard to come here today. In one way, we should all have been out in the streets supporting our kids, having their school strike for the climate today. It was really, and it is really encouraging and touching to see their involvement. The youngs are fed up of all the talking. They want to see action. They want to see responsible adults, or fossils, as they like to call us. And that's why I hope we are gathered here today to show them that action and responsible decisions are possible. Yesterday, it was a beautiful view in the harbor. Look at this video. Just in time for this conference, the Grand Venus arrived in Oslo port with 1,583 brand new Teslas for the Norwegian market. Great, but look at the boat. The past is transporting the future. As far as I know, it burns more than 35-ton diesel every day. At the same time, it would have been much more CO2 emission if the cars has been transported on the road. Zero emission at the sea, we are still yet not there, not before all the ships also get electrified. It could take some time, I guess, but shore-based electricity is a little bit more realistic. And that's happening now. We will hear more about the important role that the ports have to play in electrifying the cities later. And some funny guys on Facebook under this video, they suggested actually that in this case, the Grand Venus should have connected all the Teslas on board and used their newly charged battery with clean energy from Nevada to run the ship. That could have been something. For this, we need innovation, and innovation is the key when it comes to electrification. Our first speaker is well aware of this. Sveinung Kvale, he had to step in for the Vice Mayor Lan Marie Berg. A decision was just taken just some minutes ago. He's not a politician, Sveinung, but he's a special advisor for the Vice Mayor for Environment and Transport in Oslo. And Sveinung is one of Norway's leading experts on electric mobility policies. He has been a member of the Norwegian climate negotiation team under the UNFCCC as lead negotiator on future carbon market. He also worked with national climate policy with a special responsibility for electric mobility policies and new transport technology. And in the city of Oslo, he has the responsibility of e-mobility, car sharing, and micro-mobility. Sveinung Kvale, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Erik. And as you said, I'm following the vice mayor today, and then she had to go to the climate strike, and it was a really touching moment. I also met my son, so I'm also a proud father today, and it was a moving moment. But the vice mayor, she decided to stay, so I said, I can step in for you, that's okay. This year, we are the European Green Capital of 2019. That's really exciting and inspiring for us. Our work with reducing emissions in the transport sector was part of the reasons why we won the award. In this session, we have the opportunity to go more into the different transport policies. Oh, wrong way. So press the red button. Okay? Yeah. Okay, you may be bored of this. You've seen this number many times, but it's a massive number. 77% so far in March of new private cars in Oslo are battery electric. And if you count in the plug-in hybrids, we're on 83%. So we can say that we have the first mass market for electric vehicles, and we as a municipality, we have to cope with it. It's actually not that easy. Public policy is important, but electrifying transport and making Oslo a zero-emission city is something that can only be achieved in a great partnership with business, organization, and the city at large. The Nordic EV Summit is a great example of this. The EV policies The EV policies have been important for Oslo. Our aim has been to make it cheap and easy to use electric cars. We started building public chargers in 2008, and that's when we solved the chicken and egg problem. And today we have around 1,300 public chargers, free to use. With the speed of the transition to zero-emission vehicles, as we're seeing now, we need more public chargers. We have built around 200 public chargers per year. Now we will ramp up the speed of building chargers to 600 this year. At the same time, we know that most people prefer to charge at home. In 2018, we supported infrastructure for more than 20,000 home charging points. But now we are turning our eyes on zero-emission taxis and vans, which have not had the same success as the private cars. Last year, we introduced a new support scheme for home and office chargers for taxi and van owners. The transport sector also goes beyond cars. As we are developing our policies to reduce emissions, we see innovation in areas where we are frontrunners in the world. Many of the innovations that we have here in Oslo can be picked up by others. Requiring construction sites to be emission-free have given us the world's first electric excavator. And if you never experienced the silent travel of an electric passenger boat, Oslo is the place to be this year. We are also working for a shift of transport modes. We have a target of reducing traffic by 1/3 in 2030. At the same time, Oslo is one of the fastest growing capitals in Europe. Reducing car traffic is an important part of removing transport emissions. Our car-free policies have been controversial and received a lot of criticism. At the same time, when people experience less cars and more pedestrian-friendly streets, they often change their minds. Cleaner air and fewer cars makes the city a better place to live. We have increased the pace of building new bike lanes by 10 times compared to the last administration. That was the politician speaking, not me. We have nearly quadrupled the investments in bike lanes in Oslo from 90 million kroner in 2015 to 343 million kroner in 2019. But maybe most important of all, we are rethinking the use of public space. Several roads and parking areas have been transformed to make room for bike lanes and wider pavements. I would love to speak about also the great results on public transport and the city's ambition for a zero-emission port, but I will leave that to the next speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sveinung. Find your seat, and you will join us later here on a round table after we heard all the four speakers. Ruter AS is the public transport authority of Oslo and Akershus, and Bernt Reitan Jensen is the company's CEO. He's really investing his time in reducing CO2 emission from the public transport, that's for sure. He holds seats in the Norwegian government's expert committee on technology and future transport infrastructure. He's also a member of the Governmental Council of Mobility and Technology, which is going to advise the government what to do in the future. So it's no surprise to say that Ruter's target is emission-free transport by 2028. And that's only in 9 years, Bernt Reitan Jensen. You have to tell us how you will manage to reach this goal in so few years. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. First and foremost, I would say that up to now, public transport has been used to replace cars because the footprint of public transport is lower when it comes to climate. But it's also very much lower when it comes to how we use our city. And that's going to be even more a key element in the future. To do so, to make sure that we also clean up the way we do our business, we need to have a plan. But the most important is that we actually have to change our business plan as well. Because much of the success that we had up to now has been based on that we actually use, I would say, outdated technology. We use huge compromises to transport people from where they are not to a place they don't want to go. And we really have to understand what customers really expect from us in the future to change this. So we changed from being public transport to actually going into creating the freedom of movement for people in a sustainable way. And if we can understand that the people really want to move around, we can, together with them, change the future. So this is actually our plan, and I will say that we are committed to be totally emission-free when it comes to at least how we operate by 2028. And that means all means of transport. And I'll go into what we do in some of these, what kind of vehicles and what we actually are doing. But basically, we are changing the transport system of Oslo. And you can see here that 2028 is the target where we can see we can actually achieve it. That's when we think the technology will be ready, that we have managed all our contracts in the transition period. And it's also when we have actually learned the market how to buy and operate this technology. Because I think that is to use the innovation force in the market that our operators and suppliers actually can handle this and do this together with us has been the most important task up until now. So that's the reason why we have not just bought a lot of electric buses. We have actually taught and created learning arenas for our suppliers to learn how to do this and to base this on their skills and their innovation and their way to handle risk, really use the market to change this. And you can see here that as a general, the milestones here, that we will reach total fossil-free transport in 2020. And we will have a zero emission special transport in 2022. We'll have zero emissions for the boats, for what we do on the harbor in 24, and reach by the latest, as we see it now, a total emission-free operation by 2028. So if you go into the fleet first, and this is the boats first, we do quite a significant operation on the harbor. We have ferries transporting altogether more than 5 million people. And the largest ferries, which have the highest emissions, will actually electrify all of them this year. So by Christmas, the huge ferry lines, or the bigger boats, they take up to about 600 passengers each, will be totally electric by the end of this fall. After that, we'll go on with the smaller ferries, the island ferries, and the last part, now scheduled to be done in 2024, will be the speed ferries. The ferries that will, take people in 30 knots for longer distances, which are harder to do, but we're working together with other municipalities and technology suppliers in the different projects that will solve this, I'm convinced, before our target date, which is 2024. After now running some years of trying and testing, we're now rolling out the fleet of electric buses. And by the summer, all these 115 buses will be operational. There will be different brands, different types of buses. There will be short distance, smaller, even extended buses, so taking at the highest capacity levels. And all these different types of buses will be introduced in the next coming months. Here you can see some of the types of buses we'll be, like I said, we'll be introducing. And we also have experience to, I think we 3 years ago, introduced the first fleet of minibuses, and that was a big surprise to me that going into the market and buying 10 minibuses was, at that stage, the world's largest order in the technology market, where I actually thought that was the simplest buses to buy. We're doing this because we think, and in the experience has been as well, that public procurement is really changing the market. It's not really the market that really wants to change it themselves. They earn too much money on just providing incremental steps on their current technology. So what we have done, and what we have done together with the cities of Europe, really demanding this technology, has changed the market. And of course, even hydrogen has been a part of our lesson learned so far, and we will continue to drive those buses as well.
Thank you. We will hear more from you also later. Only 4 weeks ago, Marte Skjærning Lund was elected vice mayor in Oslo, responsible for business development, the energy companies, and the port of Oslo. She's from the Labour Party and came from the position as the chief of staff for the governing mayor's office in Oslo. And the Oslo port, Marte, will play a key role in electrifying the city, and that's the theme you will talk about now. So, Marte Skjærning Lund, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's see. So, last year, Oslo adopted a very ambitious plan for a zero-emission port. The port of Oslo is responsible for about 55,000 tons of CO2 per year. This accounts for around only 4% of the total emissions in the city of Oslo. The greatest sources of emissions at the port are, firstly, the foreign ferries, accounting for around 40% of the greenhouse emissions. Then we are followed by the shore activities such as cargo handling. And thirdly, the local ferries, as Bernt already talked about, that form a part of the public transport offering. In short, foreign ferry routes, the land-based activities, and the local ferries are the biggest contributors to emissions in the port. This action plan that we have adapted is covering all the segments entering the port of Oslo and includes 17 measures, so some more crucial than others. Our aim is that we will have a zero-emission port within 2050. And from what I'm gathered, this is the most ambitious plan for ports anywhere, as far as I know. The port is not the largest emission source, but has a large symbolic value and a potential, of course, if we are to move more transportation from land to the sea. If we move all land-based transportation to the sea, we will cut the emissions in half. So it's a big, big potential, but of course, I'm not seeing that as a really realistic future, but it seems to say something about what actually we can achieve if we use more of the sea. So let me take you through some more details on how we're going to reach our goals, emphasizing on the 3 largest sources of emissions in the port. Firstly, the foreign ferry routes. The foreign ferry routes represents about 40% of the greenhouse gas emission, but it's only limited to 5 vessels. So it's pretty overcoming, if you see what I mean. Half of the emissions from the vessels are created while the ships are docked, when they are in the port. So this is why shore power is so crucial. As we saw on your video when all the Teslas were coming in. So shore power is definitely a priority. Color Line vessels have been on shore power since 2012 in the port of Oslo. Stena Line's vessels are also on now. And just a few weeks ago, DFDS first vessel came on. And so all the three companies are now on shore power, which is, I have to say, we haven't done this by breaking their arm or threatening them or with fines. They have actually been really into this themselves. We have pushed them and they have actually delivered. So that has been a very good experience. Opportunities for zero emission solutions are shore power to meet the need for electricity when docked, the use of district heating to meet the needs for steam when docked, and battery hybrid solutions on entry and exit from the port, which will be an requirement by 2020. So not only when you're docking, but also when you're sailing in through the fjords to the port. So the local ferries, I think, I'm not going to say so much about that, Bernd took us through it, but the local ferries are part of the solution. They represent 12% of the greenhouse gas emissions. The first ferry is already, isn't it? It's about coming in August. And of course, all the public transportation is set to be emission-free by 2028, as we just heard. So then there's the land-based activity. Land-based activity represents about 14% of the total emissions in the port. By reducing the emissions from the foreign and the local ferries, together with transforming the land activity to zero emission activity, we will reduce the emissions by about 2/3 in the port. So only with these three areas. By now, all the cranes in the port are electric, and the major part of the trucks are electric. We are working hard to support emission-free transport for goods from the port to the nearest land-based cargo terminal and are seeing progress on that. So before I come to a closing, let me just say a few words about the energy sector. As you mentioned, I also am responsible for the energy sector in our energy company. To reach our high climate ambitions, it is necessary to electrify large parts of important infrastructure. Oslo owns the second largest energy company in Norway, Hafslund Eco. It is the second largest power production company and the largest transmission company, and it is run on commercial terms. An important strategy for that company is to take a position in all parts of the electrical value chain. That means that they are positioning themselves in what the market calls new regulated infrastructure, which is exciting. The charging of electrical vehicles, the charging ships through shore power, facilitating microgrids, charging infrastructure ferries, emergency generators, batteries in public buildings, and electrifying building sites. So this is not just for the public sector, it's also for the business sector. This is a way of the future. So these are all examples of products this company is now looking into, venturing into a new way of business, which is exciting. So in closing, if we are to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement, we all have to make an extraordinary effort. National governments, city governments, business, and the citizens. Electrifying a greater part of the infrastructure is crucial, so I'm very proud to be part of a city government which takes this seriously and looks at all parts of the city, from cars to public transport to building sites and also to the port. Even if it's a small part of the emissions, it's also crucial to do every bit. The future is most definitely electrical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marte. And now, last but not least, I'm happy to introduce Sharon Dijksma. She is Deputy Mayor in Amsterdam, working with traffic transport and air quality. Her background includes several minister posts in the Dutch government. Lately, she was Minister for Infrastructure and Environmental Affairs. And in Amsterdam, one of the main focus therein is the transition to an emission-free city by 2025. It's a lot of numbers, yes, but in Amsterdam, it's 2025. And we are now looking forward to hearing more about these ambitious plans. Sharon, give her a warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here in Oslo. As we already have heard, the green capital of Europe. I would like to say that Amsterdam is dying to be a green capital also. We really would like to be that, but we're not there yet. But I hope that in a few years' time we will make a difference, actually. And at the same time, what we see is that many European cities are facing the same problems. Low air quality at one hand, and too much carbon dioxide emission at the other hand. And one of the major solutions for this is to electrify literally our cities. Electrify mobility, and as soon as possible, I would say. And I have to say that Oslo is way ahead in her transition when you compare this to Amsterdam. So before I continue, I would like to start with giving a big compliment to Oslo, because you are truly a world leader when it comes to EV. And maybe I can also tell you some examples why that is true. So I'm advocating for you right now. Oslo reduces CO2 with 50% in 2020, and Amsterdam will do so by 2030. Oslo introduces zero emission zones in 2019 and Amsterdam in 2025, although we have reduced emission zones already now at 5 different subjects available. So we're not that ahead, or lying backwards, sorry. And Oslo has fossil-free public transport by 2025. We just have heard about it. And we will have this in you have it in 2020, we will have it in 2025. So this shows actually what you have already been doing, and this is really remarkable. But at the same time, what we see now in Amsterdam is that there is a lot of necessity for change. And not only because of the Paris Agreement, but also because of the air quality, which is in at least the 7th busiest streets of our city, even below the European standard. And that is not good. We need to change it, because I think that many of you will know that bad air quality is still a kind of silent killer. And many people die because of the bad air quality. And this is something which actually is a shame, and we do not talk about it a lot of times. So I think that it is important that we do so. And we have big plans. We want less space for cars in our city, and more space for people who bike or walk, and for children to play on the streets. We want to change the use of the cars. For instance, we introduce in April of this year higher parking fees. I will not become the most popular vice mayor of the city, I suppose, because, for instance, in the city inner center, you will pay for 1 hour a fee of €7.50. So this is really high, and we almost are the same, I think, at the level of London. And not everybody is appreciating that. But at the same time, if you want to have less car use, you also need some incentives to organize this. But not only the bad ones, so to say. So we are also, and I will tell you a little bit about it later, investing highly in public transport and in really making the public aware that they gain something of our policy. And one of the things that we need to do is also to eliminate a lot of parking plots. We will eliminate about 10,000 parking plots in the next 8 years. And we have a plan for this. We discuss this at the moment with also the Amsterdam people, with the companies, with everybody who wants to interfere in the discussion. And we are making a plan how to do this. Because if you would get rid of some parking plots, you also need to reconstruct the street and to give the public space back to people. And that is actually something which demands for policy and a bigger plan. So at the same time, if you need to clean, so to say, the remaining mobility, you need to electrify the mobility. And this asks for a densely organized charging point system. And I can say you that I'm a little bit proud because this is the only point where we beat Oslo. We have, I think, currently around 3,000 public charging points. Only the issue is we do not have so many electric cars. So if we would melt Oslo and Amsterdam together, that probably would be the solution. So you have the cars, we have the charging points. But what we need to say is, how can we tempt people to buy an electric car and maybe also share a car? So we want cars that are cleaner, and we want not the emphasis on owning a car, but on using a car. And we would like to organize also a way in which we can tempt people to buy, maybe together as a community, a car. So this asks for what I would say a holistic approach, because you are not only putting the pinpoint on one button, but you need to look at it at scale and also from several points. So this is why we also need great public transport, and yes, it has to be clean too. Yesterday I saw one of your buses here. This was probably the only one which is still a diesel. And somebody told me, yeah, this is more or less the equivalent of 11 diesel cars. And when there are almost no people in the bus, at that time 3, I suppose, then even public transport is more polluting, so to say, than people who take their diesel car. Right? So we need to step up there also. And I think that we need to look at privileges for people who do the right thing. So this is something in our agenda. We also should tempt people, and I think that is rather important. So last point, I think that we can learn a lot from each other. We have a clear vision on sustainability, and we encourage new initiatives and bold experiments. I told this morning in another place here that we are a living lab, and we would welcome also companies who want to experiment to come to Amsterdam and talk to us. We have a booth here also at the summit, so you're welcome. And one of the exciting examples of cooperation is, for instance, the CEEV for City project. We are now sharing knowledge from FlexPower, it is a company from Amsterdam, and smart parking in Oslo. And I think that by learning from each other, we can get a lot of extra experience, and with that we can keep our cities beautiful and take care of the world, and not only have to leave it up to our children, because we have to stand in for them, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. Just find yourself a seat there. I will welcome the rest of the panel up here on the stage. We don't have very many minutes. I'm sorry to say that. I said it before you start to speak, so then you have to try to use a few words. But I will just follow up with you, Sharon, very, very quickly. Carrot or sticks. You mentioned it a little bit with the incentive or regulation and how to deal with it. You also have a lot of experience from national politics. So if you were a minister of finance, and what kind of subsidies would you give out if you knew that it could save the world?
Well, I have never had the experience, so it might be an idea. I think that you need both carrots and sticks, because without one or the other, it won't work. So I think that both subsidizement can help, privileges can help to facilitate people. So if you need a parking permit and you have an electric car, that you get it more easier or sooner or cheaper. And at the same time, we should also tax, for instance, that behavior or that cars which are not good for the environment. So you need both incentives to make a successful policy. And I think what you also need is awareness and public support. And the last thing is that is under pressure right now everywhere in Europe where we discuss this. So when I had these bilaterals today with the colleagues, vice mayors, this is something which I think worries us all. So we need to try to show to the public what is their advantage of all this change. And we need to help people literally in order to make it happen.
And Sveinung, when it comes to subsidize, a big reason for the EV success in Norway is that we made it cheap to buy, as you also mentioned it. No purchase tax and no VAT. And I worked several years as the communication advisor for the Minister of Climate. You also worked in the same ministry at the same time. But every year, I saw the fight between the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Climate, if we should keep all these incentives. And what do you think happened the day they disappear? Will people stop buying electric vehicles? It's a little bit political question, but we also know some facts about it. What actually the motivation of change?
I think we were not allowed to say that we had fights between the Ministry of Climate and Ministry of Finance, but we're not working there anymore, so we can say that we actually had that.
Yeah.
But
I never signed this paper. Yeah.
I think also looking to Norway, maybe you asked the wrong question, because what will we do with the tariffs when the day we only have zero-emission cars? I think that's the most relevant question, because that will happen.
But then I go to you, Bernd, because one question here now online, it's also a little bit political question, but it's also concern your work. Should there be a significant higher focus on electrifying buses and cargo transport than subsidizing private EV in a large city like Oslo? Is it too much focus on all the advantages and we use too much money on it? Would you like to have some of that money?
I think first of all, I'm absolutely convinced that electrification of transport is just rolling out. And the reason why is that we're not going to a higher cost level, we're actually going to a lower cost level. So we're looking at this as that we're actually spending some more money on it right now, whether it's tax reductions or whatever. It's just to fuel the transition. So when the transition have happened, we expect, and we can see that actually already, that we are going to a lower cost level. So I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about, what we are worried about, or we are into right now, is to see that electrification is not enough. We actually have to do it in a sustainable way as well, which electrification is just a part of. So we're actually looking into the transport system in a more holistic way to see how could we create a future transport system that actually uses less of our planet's resources that we are doing right now. And I think the key word is that we have to find out how to incentivize that we travel more together. Not more sharing economy, but actually how can we incentivize and create systems where it's more popular, better to travel together. Then we can do it in a more sustainable way.
And Marte, you are you are the owner of the electric company in Oslo in one way also. So you have a lot of power how to use that electricity. But for how long do you think it's possible to give free electricity to all the electric car private owner in a city like Oslo?
We're reaching,
forever?
No,
no,
we're reaching that limit. We have already said that people are going to have to start paying. But the thing is, you have to keep the incentives saying that it will always be cheaper to buy the greener solution, to drive the greener solution, to use the greener solution. It always has to be cheaper than to go and buy your diesel car. So when you said you have incentives, so you can make it easy to buy from the national governments for an EV, but you can also make it easy to use and cheap to use. That's what we've been doing. It's free in the toll roads. It's free to park, for example.
But it will never last forever.
No, it's not. And
yeah.
it's starting now. We're saying from next year we have to start paying in Oslo. It's not free charging anymore. It's not going to cost you a lot. yet. But you have to pay some, because of course you're, from an air pollution side, you can see, well, also an EV car will pollute the air for asthmatics and whatever. So you have to start paying, but it has to be quite a gap. It has to be in a gap. But also, what I'm saying is that what we've done now with the toll roads is not just giving incentives to the greener solutions, but you also have to kick up the price for the polluters. You have to do both. It's not enough just to give incentives for green solutions. You have to give someone the stick also. So that's the way it's going to be in the ports too. So when we say that we will try to give a lower price for docking for greener vessels, we will do that. We will increase that incentive, but we'll also look into how we can skip up the price for the vessels that aren't that green. We will look into queue systems saying that, well, if you're green, we're going to give you the better docking time, for example. Well, we can do that, but we can't actually say no to vessels coming in. That's the law, but we have to actually welcome them in to dock. But
that's maybe a good law to change, you know, that you can show some more muscles and say that sorry if you don't change your motors and then find another place.
Yeah, I think so, and I think also the municipalities through Norway that owns most of the ports are looking into that, because now we can't really view the green elements. We have to bring in the ships. Of course, I get why we have to do that, but we aren't able to look at the green elements and say, well, we're going to give you the space and not the polluting ships. And of course, the law is now debated. It's been a national committee looking at the law that says that we have to bring in all ships. Yeah. And they are divided, but I'm saying that the municipalities, I think, will... a lot of the municipalities will, I guess, want to change the law, saying that we want more to say about which vessels are accepted into our ports.
We got some questions online here, so since we asked for the question, we have to use them, and that's why I jump a little bit to Ruter here. One question is that got mostly like here. Ruter has tested battery electric and hydrogen buses for some time now. What has been the lesson learned so far, and what aren't the do's and don'ts?
You can see that, you know, because of the fair scale in battery electric technology, coming, for instance, from the private cars, you can see that that has been the technology that had progressed the most, and of course have reached commercial accessibility, which hydrogen vehicles still are struggling to get there. You know, it's just about sheer numbers. And we can see now that even though we had a situation some 3 years ago, that you see that hydrogen has the potential of a range extender, that you can actually run longer, you can see that the battery electric is catching up. So I say that for city purposes, battery electric buses, as long as you can fit in the infrastructure that you need for charging, battery electric is going to be the leading technology.
Small comments on you from at the end here. You have the same discussion also in Amsterdam. We are red and over time here, so we have to be very short, but I will give you the word.
We have the same discussion. I think more or less the same outcome. And the only issue is that we really need to make a bigger plan also for the region, for the charging points. And in hydrogen, we are also willing to invest in that, but we need it probably more for like the waste management and for the bigger lorries, and therefore we are looking into this. But at this moment, if you look at our public transport and also at private and public cars, we are more the chargers, so to say.
But I really like the idea to merge Oslo and Amsterdam. Oslo is a great city, but I think it could be even more fun if we had some Amsterdam here. We have to, it's red, actually. We have to stop because we have to fix this room to a plenary session. Thank you very much for joining us here. And I will just tell everyone that, you know, use the opportunity today after the conference to go out in the street and talk with the young kids. They are incredible, and they will be out the whole evening, I have a feeling. So go out and say hello to them. After the conference, of course. And thank you all for coming here, and we will move on. Thank you.
Thank you.